Hi there. Welcome to Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. I'm Carol Cox, founder and CEO of Speaking Your Brand. Today, we are talking about how to go bold with your thought leadership message. My guest today is Jodi Flynn, who has a company called Women Taking the Lead. She also has a fantastic podcast called Women Taking the Lead. And we're going to chat today about how Jodi has become much more bold with her own thought leadership message over the past few months, especially when she went through our Thought Leader Academy. She just graduated a couple of weeks ago. So we'll also chat a little bit about her experience in the Thought Leader Academy. But I really want Jodi to kick it off here with you is I know you've been doing a lot of speaking. You've had your podcast for a number of years now. You've done a lot of speaking and presentations, and you're really good at it. And I know that you enjoy it a lot. So what was the kind of the process for you, or what was the aha moment for that where you felt like, okay, I think I need to go bolder with what I'm talking about?
Yeah. First, Carol, thank you so much for inviting me on your LinkedIn Live. This is amazing. And yes, you're right. I have done a lot of speaking, and I will say this is counter to what most people feel about speaking, but I love it. I really do. Not to say I don't get nervous before a presentation. I want to do a great job. I get the jitters. I might get a little like butterflies in my stomach, all of that stuff, but have learned over time to channel that energy into my presentations. And a minute in, I'm like, I am in my zone and I love this. And there was a particular type of presentation that I was comfortable with and I leaned on. And it was more of a workshop style presentation. And in fact, there were times where I was asked, can you make this kind of a workshop? We want to make sure that there are takeaways and actions that the participants can do. We want this to be high value. And I was like, absolutely, yes, I can do that. But then I noticed the more I was speaking, the more I was being invited to do keynote style presentations. And I didn't, I mean, I've seen keynote presentations, they're amazing, but I really didn't understand the difference between the two. And for a long while, I would turn my keynote presentations into that workshop type format. And it worked for a long while until it didn't. It was not working anymore. I was getting to the level that when an event planner asked for a keynote presentation, they had a certain type of presentation in mind. And I was running into stumbling blocks and, had disappointed someone who hired me. And of course, I've been following you for years. We've known each other for a while and I've had some of my clients have hired you to work with them. And I've always had it on my list of like, okay, as soon as I have the bandwidth and the time, I'm going to hire Carol and we're going to hone this out. And after an experience I had last fall, I was like, that's it. That's it. I'm done with trying to figure this out on my own. I need professional help to help me develop my keynote presentation.
Well, Jodi, thank you for sharing that. And for those of you who are watching right now, either live or in the replay, if you can relate to what Jodi is talking about, as far as you feel really good with the workshop style presentations, with teaching, with training, that's really kind of your wheelhouse and your comfort zone, but you feel like it's a little bit more challenging to go into more of the keynote, story driven, kind of big picture type of talks because you may feel like it's less tangible or like you're providing less valuable takeaways for the audience. And I know that so many of us, because we start speaking and doing the teaching and training as type of speaking engagements, it can be hard to shift to kind of this other style of presentations. So Jodi, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do in Women Taking the Lead, who you work with, kind of what challenges that your clients are facing and what you help them to get to? So let's talk about that first, and then we'll come back and talk about your thought leadership message related to that.
100%. So, in Women Taking the Lead, I'm an executive leadership coach, and I specialize in working with women leaders in that first year after a promotion, when they're still trying to stabilize. It is not uncommon for women, and then to be promoted, and the style of leadership that's required at this new level is not what has made them successful thus far. And so they have a hard time letting go of the old ways of operating as a leader and embracing the new ways. And for women specifically, some of the things they have to let go of is perfectionism, people pleasing, needing to be in control, wanting to have like their hands in every project, attending all the meetings to make sure all the information is gathered and is correct. And, so if they don't immediately start to adapt to the new level of leadership, they start to become overextended and exhausted. And so I coach them through that transition to operate at a new level, to almost take on a completely new identity. And what really hits me in my business is when women have, been promoted, they're successful, they're talented, they're driven, they're amazing. And they say things like, I don't want the next one. This is already too much. Like I can't, and so they're already deciding like this is as far as I go because sometimes I'm working with clients who have made tremendous sacrifices to their health, well-being, and their personal life. So the thought of taking on more is just, beyond them.
Yeah, and that's really obviously because I know you're a huge proponent, as am I, of having more women in leadership positions. And so if they're feeling like they don't even want to go further within that company to have more promotions because they're still trying to do too much in that kind of that previous identity that they held.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's counterintuitive to at that point to think like, "Oh, I want the next one," like I'm ready to take it on, internally we get this feeling of like, "Nope, I need to put the brakes on." What they don't realize is it's how they're operating. Right. And so as much as, when we're first talking, my heart goes out to them and I'm like, oh, I've been there. I understand that feeling. And I've done that to myself as well. But this can be fixed, right? With a few tweaks of how you're doing things, all of a sudden you will have more time, more energy, and more confidence in the work that you're doing. And you won't need to overextend yourself to get it all done.
Yeah. Okay. So now, Jodi, so that seems like a very straightforward kind of business, sales, and marketing message, right? To
Mhm.
your clients, like, okay, potential client, here's what you're facing. I understand this, like the validation, and here's what I can help you to do so that you can achieve X, Y, Z, right? So that's our like
Yeah.
a business, sales, marketing, check, check, check. But then we have the thought leadership side, which I always kind of liken to your thought leadership is parallel to your business. So it supports what you do in your business, but it's not quite the same thing as your sales and marketing message because it's a bigger picture, it's a bigger idea of what's going on societally, like industry wide or society wise, that is causing these things to happen in the first place. So Jodi, can you share a little bit about your thought leadership message and why there was some hesitancy initially to kind of say the things that you really wanted to say around
Yes.
it?
Yes. I will say coming into the program when we started thinking about, okay, what's my message? And at first it was like, I got to make sure I get it right. But I realized like I've had this message for quite a while. I have been, working with women and had my own experiences for quite some time. I've been doing research, been reading the articles that come out on the latest, women in the workplace and companies, all of that. And I've known for a long time that companies benefit from having more women in senior leadership and on their corporate boards. Like it's researched, it's validated, right? I almost want to shout to the world like, ladies, we don't have to prove ourselves anymore, right? Like there was a time when people questioned, can women be leaders? Can they do this? Like, yes, they can. Not only can they do it, they are necessary, right? For the health and the longevity of these companies, right? And so when I think about that and I think about all the sacrifices that women are making to try to achieve higher levels of leadership, what they have to go through, the pressures that are within work and outside of work that are put on women, and they're still feeling like, I have to prove myself, I have to struggle. Um my thought is, this is backwards.
Mm.
Like, why? Like, it has been proven, like, you are necessary, you are needed. The problem is the obstacles within companies that are preventing women from rising to senior leadership as quickly as men are. And these obstacles can't necessarily be changed by the women who don't have the power to do so, right? Like, it's almost like they're almost invisible until somebody points them out that this is a problem. But until then, these women are struggling to overcome these obstacles. And so when we were honing our leadership, the leadership message, and I was thinking about, well, how would I deliver this? What would I title it? And we came down to, women don't need to change. Companies need to change. And they need to change because these companies need women in senior leadership more than women need these companies. And so that was exciting. And then the next step was, I started thinking about saying that publicly. And instantly, and I know you've talked about this on your podcast, and you shared it on LinkedIn, was almost like a perceived backlash that came at me. And I thought about, and I got scared, right? It was I was like, sometimes on the calls, I'd be holding my throat to self-soothe myself, to try to, like, when I think about doing this. And, it was, what we call the imposter syndrome. What made me so uncomfortable was, I don't have a PhD in organizational development or organizational leadership. Who am I to deliver this message? I haven't written a scholarly book, right? And all of that. And so thoughts of that nature, like, I can't be the one to deliver this message. The message was fine. We just
Mm.
we got there, but I didn't believe in myself as the messenger, and that's what I bumped up against in the program.
Well, thank you, Jodi, so much for sharing that. And this is real. This happens, I know, to me. I know this happens to so many of the other women that I talk to. So you are far from alone. But yet it's real. And I'm sure that your clients also are experiencing this in the corporate environment that they're in as well.
100%, right? When they're, not speaking up for themselves or advocating or asking for what they want, I know what's going through their head is, well, I can't do that. They won't listen to me. Who am I? This is just the way things are, and I have to deal with it. Yep, 100%. Same thought process.
So, Jodi, how are you feeling now about this, about being the messenger for this very important message?
Completely different, like, complete 180 turnaround. And it was in one of our masterminding calls in the program that I shared this, and I didn't know what was going to come of it, but I was like, okay, it's not getting the work done for me. That's the problem. It's the mindset. Every time I try to develop this keynote, it is a struggle because of this thought that keeps going through my head. And a couple of the women on the call, and Diane, I remember specifically, was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, because my business will be 12 years in just a couple of months. I've had my own experiences as a senior leader in an organization, and I've been coaching women who are senior leaders in organizations for years and years and years. And there was this, like, you have been a part of these intimate conversations with women who are going through this, right? And I tie it back to one of my favorite songs in Hamilton is "In the Room Where It Happens," right? I'm in the room where it's happening, right? Where women are having honest conversations about what's going on with them at work and the struggles that they're having, and the perspective I have And those experiences allow me to be the messenger, of this particular message. Like I can bring this to leaders and organizations and say, I've heard women talking. Here's what they're saying, and here's what the problems are. And
Mm.
that was just a turning point. It was like, oh yeah, okay, can do this.
Yes, like those are your credentials. You don't need to have had a PhD or have written a scholarly, journal article that's been peer reviewed. Yes, those things are great, and I'm so glad that there are people out there who are doing that type of research and that type of data collection, putting that out there. But where you're doing is kind of like in the field, like an anthropologist in the field, collecting the
Yes.
stories and the information and the data in that way.
Yeah, no, I love how you just said that, Carol. It's a different perspective, right? There are the people who do the research and the study, but then there are the people who are like, I'm on boots on the ground. Like I am boots on the ground reporting back. Here's what's going on and here's what needs to change. Right? It's great to have theories and study and research and things of that nature, but I am hearing it, like from the horse's mouth. There's got to be a better analogy than that, but I'm hearing it straight from these women.
Mm, yeah, and that is so incredibly valuable for the organizations who you're talking to.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so let me share. I'm going to put this up on the screen here. So this is our voice thought leadership model. So this is something that I came up with because, of course, I love acronyms. So I put together these things and I can't help but define an acronym for it. So voice stands for something, and so you have your viewpoint for your topic area, which Jodi, clearly you have. The O is open, bold, and direct communication. The I is an individual story that you universalize. C is a container for your message, and then E is being emotive, real, and vulnerable in your content and in your delivery. And so, Jodi, I feel like you worked on these in the Thought Leader Academy to develop this into your overall thought leadership message and into your signature talk, the keynote that you worked on. And I remember in your graduation speech
Mm.
that you shared a very powerful story about kind of what led you to the passion and the interest you have for the work that you do today to help women. Would you, I'm totally putting Jodi on the spot here. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
No, absolutely, Carol. I'm happy to. I mean, this really set me on a path. And the story I shared, I was about 4 years old, and it was summertime in the late 1970s, which dates me, and I remember it was summer because I remember the summer dresses with those straps that, but I had a sweater on because we were going to church. And it was an exciting day because my brother Sean was going to be on the altar for the first time serving as an altar boy. So it was like, ooh, this is going to be fun. So we went, we sat in the pew, and I remember just sitting in the pew. My parents like to sit in the front pew too. So we're in the front, and I have perfect line of sight on my brother, and I'm watching him do his thing, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. It's like a performance, like this is great. And I remember thinking like, I want to do that. Right. And as we were walking out of the church, I said to my mom, I was like, when I'm old enough, I want to be an altar boy too. And my mother looked down at me and she said, you can't be an altar boy. You're a girl. Only boys can serve. And, I was kind of like, oh, like just a little taken aback. And I think for me, it at 4 years old created like an awareness of things. Like I started watching things a little more closely, the differences between what men were doing and what women were doing, what men were allowed to do and what women were not allowed to do, what we believed men to be and what we believed women to be. And it was even more galling about 5 years later when I watched my brother Steve, my younger brother Steve, up on the altar serving as an altar boy, and it was so
Mm.
crushing. And I remember at some points just being beside myself, like, why this makes no sense. I think any girl can understand
Mhm.
that moment of like, this makes no sense to me at all. Um, and I at times was angry
Mhm.
about it as well. And it has been, I would say, my unofficial, unintended life's work to figure this out and to change that, right? To remove obstacles to women, doing these things, like when they want to serve, especially when they want to serve and they want to contribute back. Let's not stop them. And I'll go even further and I will say many of the predicaments that we're experiencing globally, in our current era is due to the fact that women have not been a part of the conversation and they have not been in positions of authority and decision making power. And, whatever I can do to change that and to remove those obstacles and make it easier for women to not only get to senior leadership, but to stay there, right? And to feel good in those positions, I'm going to do it.
Mm. Well, Jodi, thank you so much for sharing that story. I know how personal that is to you and how you still feel it. And I feel the same way about, childhood stories too. And I, but you can see how your overall thought leadership message that it's not the women who need to change, it's the organization. It was not you who needed to change as a little girl who wanted to serve. It was the church, the
Right.
organization that needed to change to
Right.
allow girls to do that.
Right. It was like, I'm great. I
Right.
don't need to change. And, I'm happy to say they have. My niece, Vanessa, is an altar server at her church. And I'm thrilled, but let's remove all the obstacles, right? There's
Yes.
more. There's so many more. I'm glad to see that one go away, but there's so many more that we need to work on.
Yes, yeah, and that's why I'm so grateful for you and for so many of the other women who are doing this work as really their life's work. Jodi, as you went through the Thought Leader Academy earlier this year, was there anything that surprised you about the experience, or that kind of like what you worked on something or something came, to you that you weren't expecting?
That's a great question. I guess the level of structure in the program, I wasn't expecting. Like, the trainings were great. The worksheets were great. I'm a bit type A, so I do like structure. Right? I like to know there's a path and there's a plan. But also, what I really appreciated, like, I didn't realize um how much the women in the program were going to contribute to my thought leadership and my message. Like, so much value and so much gold came from you and Diane and the other participants. Sometimes just giving their feedback or giving one piece of like, I like this, or you should do, I would recommend doing a little more of this. And it made all the difference in the world, like having that supportive community while you're doing something that, while it's simple, is not easy, that I didn't expect, and that was amazing.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear that, Jodi. And I want to give a shout out to some of the women who are watching right now live. Hi, Mary Beth. So nice to see you. Hi, Monica. She says, "Believe in yourself as the messenger." Yes, and she says, and then she was talking about the organization needs to change. And Monica said, especially when girls and women are willing vessels, like we're willing participants in that. And then Heike Martin is in our current Thought Leader Academy that just started. She says, not having credentials is something that's been holding her back as
Mm.
well. So yeah. And then Diane is here as well, of course, our lead speaking coach. And she says, so glad that you're working to change the message that too often girls receive, that they can't do something, or they're not supposed to do something, or they're not the right fit for something.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah.
And in organizations, that still goes on. Some of the research I've been doing is, when the job is difficult for women, they will get subtle encouragement to take a step back.
Really?
Yes, whereas men will be given encouragement to, like, dig in, keep going. Women, there tends to be a different conversation of like, oh, well, you might want to think about, not going after that promotion or not being on this. I know there's a lot of demands on you because you have a family, that sort of thing. So there's this bias of like, and I truly believe that often it comes with the intention of support. Like, I want to support you. I don't want you to struggle. So sometimes it's that process of, we don't want to make women struggle. We don't want it to be, we know you have enough on your plate. We don't want it to be harder. But those are also things that sideline women's careers and make it harder for women to get to senior leadership.
Wow, it's basically curtailing their ambition.
Right. Right.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, so glad that you are discovering this by these conversations that you're having with women in these organizations.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
All
shocking.
right. Yeah, it is. So I have a couple more slides here to share. So we do have our Thought Leader Academy is the program that Jodi just graduated from. And if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, you can do so by going to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/academy. And it truly is kind of like, this is my life's work, is to put together a program like this that helps women like Jodi and some of the other women that have gone through the academy and are going through it right now to find that clarity and that confidence to put themselves out there in a bolder way. Because we know, number one, it's not always easy. And having that, this is my own experience throughout my career, having that support system of other women for me makes all the difference. And then knowing that, and also getting validation on your thought leadership message and your idea so that like, yes, I'm headed in the right direction. This is something that's important and that's going to resonate with my audience. I think that I also find that's useful for so many of the women who we talk to.
Oh, 100%. I was just thinking, I was like having flashbacks of the experience I had with the women for myself as well, and how much I enjoyed contributing to the other women as well when they were sharing their thought leadership. And instantly I could think of like studies and research out there, that I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, yes, it's so needed. Like, and just helping them to, one, believe in it like I needed to believe in my message, but also honing it, right? So they feel comfortable and confident delivering.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are watching this on LinkedIn, make sure to connect with Jodi here on LinkedIn. You can find her Jodi, Jodi Flynn, Flynn. And then also make sure to take a listen to Jodi's podcast called Women Taking the Lead. She really does fantastic solo episodes. I enjoy listening to them. I'm not a woman in corporate, clearly, but I learn things from listening to Jodi's episodes. So if you're an entrepreneur, you will listen to them as well. She's had episodes on asking for help, investing in the help that you need, things that so many of us could benefit from listening to. And Jodi, share with us your website address and anywhere else you would like people to connect with you.
Mm-hmm. My website is it's plural, womentakingthelead.com. And honestly, LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. You can send me a message, connect with me, tell me that you saw me on Carol's LinkedIn Live, and I would be happy to connect with anyone and, start building a relationship.
Absolutely. Well, Jodi, thank you so much for coming on Backstage with Speaking Your Brand.
Thank you for having me, Carol, and thank you to everyone for joining.